Welcome to another Unwinding with Fiber and Fabric. I wanted to pop in and do a quick update on my quilting progress. I may combine this video with an additional section a little later, or may post it by itself. I haven't yet decided, but I do know that I wanted to pop in and update on my pink and yellow quilt that I've been working on, because it is going to go to its recipient early this upcoming week. So I wanted to get some video footage of it before it goes away. I wrapped up the quilting the other night, and I wanted to just double check that I had enough quilting per inch for the type of batting I was using. And I was pretty sure I was using 80% cotton, 20% polyester like I normally use. But as I started scouring over the information, I'd bought this big roll of batting, and so I was looking at the paper that I'd pulled off a section, and I was scouring over the information, and two things all of a sudden popped out to me. One is that yes, I had quilted this enough, because this specific brand, I'm using Warm and Plush cotton batting. This specific brand says that I can quilt up to 6 inches apart and it will be just fine. And that's good to know, because some battings, if you don't quilt more closely together, they'll start to break down a little bit, come apart in the wash over time. So I was really pleased to see that the 6 inches was the correct amount, because almost all of my stitching is at least no further apart than 5.5 inches. Most of it is only 3 inches apart. Some of it, there's where the embroidery, let me show, get this in there we go. Where the embroidery is, that's a 6-inch square. So when I quilted 1/2 inch inside of the square, it makes it so that there's quilting within 5 inches of other quilting. So, worked out really well. But the other thing I found when I was looking at the information trying to decide if I'd quilted this quilt enough, is that when I thought I purchased 80% cotton, 20% polyester batting, as I normally use, what I'd ended up buying was 100% cotton. And I had never used 100% cotton batting before. It was one of those wonderful flash sale deals that I was able to take advantage of, where I got a whole giant roll of this batting for a much less price than I would normally spend if I were buying it by the package. And for some reason I thought I was buying Warm and Natural. Instead, I was buying Warm and Plush, and the Warm and Plush is 100% cotton. So I thought, okay, well, this is going to be interesting. So I sewed on the binding. I put a backing that's a little bit hotter pink, and I know the colors don't show up quite as well, but we got this light pink, and this is more of a hot pink. So this is a nice little baby pink, and this is much more of a real Barbie bright pink. So I put the backing on. I used a little bit of the hotter pink as the binding. Got everything sewed on, threw it in the washing machine, threw it in the dryer, and oh my goodness, it's squishy. I'm gonna see it. It's thick, it's squishy, it's puffy. It's perfect for the 1-year-old little girl who's going to be getting this. It is large, it's soft, it's dense, it's wonderful. I would imagine that I could quilt this much more densely and it would flatten a little bit more. I probably could quilt around the designs and have them puff up maybe a little bit. I'm so delighted, because this really lives up to its name. It is plush. It has loft, much like the polyester bats that that I was used to in my youth, but it has the same warmth and heaviness, the weight of the cotton polyester that I'm used to, but after washing, it puffed. My fabrics are pre-washed, so they shouldn't shrink. But the batting was not pre-washed. And yes, that's a new concept for me too, pre-washing your batting. But there were actually instructions on the package. But the batting wasn't pre-washed, so it was going to shrink. And to me, I do love that look. It's crinkly just enough to have that worn, hand-quilted look and feel. But it's still flat. It's easy. It was a dream to quilt through. I had to undo a couple sections of the stitches before I put the binding on. I hadn't quite lined them up right on the border as well as I wanted to, so I undid that. And what I discovered is it was really hard for me to find my stitches in the ditch. Now that it's been washed, it's really, really hard to find my stitches in the ditch. It was really easy to quilt, but it's fluffy and plush, and I have to admit, it's hard for me to give this away. But I am sure that it will give tons and tons of joy to the little girl that it is going to. And so it has its label on. It's been pre-washed. It's going to be folded up. And I'm going to allow my husband to deliver it this week when he goes and sees the dentist. It's one of the ladies in my dentist office. It's her little girl. And I am sure they are both, mom and daughter, going to love this quilt, because it's hard not to love its soft and squishiness. It makes you want to have cold weather outside and snuggle up and watch a fun movie. So, this quilt, I wanted to share something. I've never done this before, but I pieced the back. I really wanted to use this brighter pink on the back, but I didn't purchase quite enough. So I used this panel of yellow, 2 panels of pink, and I pieced the back. And oh my goodness, it was fun. Everything about this quilt was fun. It was really a joy for me. So I wanted to share that. As you can see, I'm really pleased with this. And yeah, if the little girl doesn't want it, I will definitely take it back. But as I said, I'm sure that the little girl will love it. It is just snuggly. And I really hope it gets used and worn and drug all over the house. It's what it's meant to be. It is. I make quilts specifically for them to be used. Washed, loved, chocolate chip cookies, the whole works. That's what it's meant for. I also wanted to show, I sat down and I also got the binding on this quilt. I've been working on this quilt for a while. It was set aside as I moved on to a few other projects I needed to get finished more quickly. It's a quilt I've been working on for, believe it or not, many years. At first, I thought it might be a quilt of valor for someone. That never happened. Things got in the way, mostly my health. Then I started thinking I'd make it for my husband, but the quilt that I was making for my son, when he and I were talking about it, because it's another one of the projects that had been put aside as my health had gotten bad for a while. And so when I was talking to my son about this last fall, he thought the quilt that I had been making for him should go to his dad. And I think in the end that was really the much better option. It was designed a long time ago. The embroidery that was on it fit much more my husband's military experience. And my husband is not big into the red, white, and blue or any of that. So my son and I talked about it. My son said, give the other quilt, the blue quilt, which I've shown in a video prior. Give the blue quilt to Dad. And yes, this one that I thought maybe I'd make for my husband, he said, I would like that one. So he is in the military. He's in the Air Force as well. And he thought this would be ideal for where he is right now in life. And it's smaller, so it's another one that you can snuggle up with while you watch TV. So he really, really likes the idea of this. So I have the binding half sewn on. Oops, sorry about that loud noise, if that was loud. I have the binding sewn onto the front. It's folded over to the back. I use these little clips. Let me bring that in here close. Sorry. And I have it, there we go. I have it folded over, maybe this way. Folded over, so I'm just going to sit down with a needle and thread, and I'll sew that binding on. Same thing I did on the other quilt, I will do on this quilt as well. And so I will probably have, and oh, it has a label already on it, ready to be hand stitched down. And so I'll probably have this done before I actually get a chance to finish this video. So I wanted to come just for a few minutes, show the toddler quilt. I'll probably come back later in the week after this one's been washed and show this one as well. And then finish this video. But this one, there's still a little bit of time. The other one, as I said, it's going to a home. But I do look forward to this one. I do love it. I've always been a bit of a red, white, and blue fan myself. And I think my son will really enjoy having this. So, it has been a productive little time. I'm going to say goodbye for now. And as I said, I'll probably have a part 2 later in this week. I hope that until then, you're enjoying your time, and I'm going to go get my needle out and start sewing. Well, it's been a couple days. No, it's actually probably been about a week since I made the first part of this video, and the pink and yellow quilt went off to its recipient, and it was well loved. There was great excitement. My husband actually really enjoyed delivering it, and I couldn't be happier. It's definitely a quilt that I won't be getting back because based on the reception that it received when my husband took it to the recipient, it was probably getting snuggled in before the end of that day. So I am thrilled. That just makes me just so happy. It gives me a sense of peace and joy, because sometimes when the world is a little bit troubled, there is peace to be found in doing just something nice, something caring for somebody, whether it's somebody you know well, whether it's somebody you barely know. It's just a wonderful feeling. And for me, it gives me a sense of peace. And this week, it really helped knowing that that quilt had gone to a lovely mother and her daughter, and it will be so enjoyed. I wouldn't be at all surprised if there were other members of the family who will also try to snuggle with that quilt. The more, the merrier. So, I also did get the binding sewn on my red, white, and blue quilt for my son, and I got it washed, and it is ready to be packaged up and put in the mail. I wanted to show, it's really hard to see, but oh, I think you can almost see right smack dab in the center of the star is some hand quilting, and it's in the shape of a heart. So each one of the insides of these star blocks had some extra quilting just to make sure that the quilting was evenly spread throughout the design. Sometimes, even when you don't need to quilt as closely together, it's good to have a balance. And where I was going around all of the other the other shapes, that open area would have felt just too open, and I wanted to tack it down. And so my go-to shape is often a heart, especially when I'm giving it to someone I love. So this one is about to go into the mail, but before I put it in the mail, I wanted to get something else done, and that's why I've been busy and why I haven't been back to finish this video. My daughter and I want to create Halloween placemats, and the pattern is one that I want to, I did placemats last year, but I want to do a log cabin placemat. And I want to have it so that it can go up on my my blog as a free pattern. And because I wanted to do the log cabin, I needed some designs that were a little bit smaller than say the majority of the embroidery designs that I have. So I sat down with the task of creating some Halloween inspired designs. Now there's a connection to the quilt here in just a moment, but I made a bunch of designs for my daughter and I to start working on this placemat project this next upcoming week. We were waiting for some fabric to arrive because, as it turns out, while I have a huge stash of fabric, orange is not a color I have a lot of, mainly because I had a lot of orange around me in my youth and I didn't like the color so much, but I'm warming up to the color as I get older. It was my grandmother's favorite color, so I do have a number of things that she made, especially one wonderful quilt that has a lot of orange in it. But I needed some small embroidery designs to go on the inside of these placemats. So I sat down and I created what will be the centers of the placemat pattern that I will be posting. And they are adorable. So it's a project my daughter wants to do. I think it's going to be a combination. I think we'll both be working on it, but for the most part, she's going to be trying to get all of them done. They will be for her. So that's what I've been doing instead of getting this quilt for my son in the mail. And then I realized he had asked me for, I've been making in the past a bunch of coasters. Think of, we call them mug rugs. And he'd asked me for some. He has a number of coasters that he crochets, and so he's crocheted himself a number of them. But he saw these that I was making with the embroidery machine, and he asked for some. And it is a project that I was able to use some of the designs I did for my daughter, manipulate them a little different. But it's a project I wanted to quickly share here at the end of this video, because it's a great way of using up the cotton batting scraps that we have left over when we make quilts. And while I did these in the hoop, they can be done with a regular sewing machine, applique, any of the regular quilting techniques, and just use 100% cotton as much as possible because it holds up to heat. I'm not putting these in the microwave, so I don't have to worry about that. And I love using that, but I love using the cotton. I love using the cotton fabric because in an area like where I live right now, where there's a lot of humidity, we get a lot of condensation on our glasses and things of that nature. So somebody I saw posted, do people really use coasters anymore? I use them all the time. I especially like them. They're like little mini placemats. I like to have them with my little bowl of cereal, my hot cocoa, it's just, I feel better about setting my cups and mugs down on a coaster than I do on a wood surface. I have some wood items from the past that are inherited from different family members, and there's a lot of watermarks on them. So, but it's also, for some reason, the idea of putting a hard glass or mug on a hard surface kind of bothers me. So I have coasters all over. But I wanted to show you the trick. So, of course, when making, and I use this technique, I can use this technique for different Christmas decorations and things, signs that I do. But this technique's really interesting because if you know, here's the side, the back side, so the wrong sides of my fabric. But what I did, instead of leaving an opening at the bottom to turn it inside out to get the finished shape, instead what I did is I made two flaps. Now, if you're trying to scrimp on the use of fabric, this uses up 3 6-inch pieces of fabric, or 5.5-inch pieces of fabric, I should say. But it uses, well, about 3 pieces as opposed to just the 2 that you would have if you turned it, left an opening and turned it. But the thing that I like about this, and that's why I wanted to show it, is that when you use this technique, and I still have jump threads I have to cut. When you use this technique and you turn it right, right side out like that, it gives you a very cleanly finished coaster. You don't have to worry about sewing anything closed. Now, I will sometimes go and whip stitch this closed. It's not necessary, but it's kind of one of those things I do like to do when I finish. So they can be thrown in the wash, pressed again, and they're going to be fine. So while it uses an extra piece of fabric, as opposed to when you're doing it, leaving an opening, it gives it a stiffer, more firm, I think, denseness, density. And so I really find they work really well. The other thing is it creates a seam inside. You can feel the extra fabric from the seam allowance, and it makes it very nice and smooth, so that what you're putting on the inside of it, it has kind of like a little lip. So I've been making these. These are going to go to my son with the package because he really wanted some of these. He saw this Love chocolate one and he liked it. So I decided to make him some Halloween ones. A Christmas type tree and evergreen. A star. I'm trying to get it. There we go. A star. An apple or cherry tree. Oh, look, I can put it over here and I can still, you can still see my face. A heart. An autumn leaf. Another one of the designs that I created for my daughter, a Halloween pumpkin patch of jack-o'-lanterns, and Mr. Corn. So I've made him 10 coasters. They will go in the box with the quilt, and I think he'll be thrilled. Won't be a surprise because he'll watch this video, and so I've already sent him pictures of what I was working on today. But I did want to show you this because while all of this is done in the embroidery machine, in the hoop, and there's tons of mug rug designs out there. If you have an embroidery machine, there's tons of them. Creative Kiwi and Designs by Juju, they make a bunch of them. I'm sure there's a ton of other people who make them as well. I designed these up myself. And I went with, they're about just over 5 inches in design. About 125 millimeters is the design that I did in the hoop. But if you don't have an embroidery machine, these could easily be done with traditional quilting, applique, sewing techniques. I think they could be really fun, done with acrylic paints, crayons, anything to go on it. It's just, make them like you would make a little quilt that can be thrown in the wash, and they work great. So that is my update on my quilting and a little tip for some seasonal projects. I'm hoping to have the placemats done to show in the next couple weeks, so keep an eye out for that. And I hope that you'll take some time and unwind with fiber and fabric yourself and find some seasonal inspiration. It's a little early to be called autumn, but I kind of figure might as well jump in. And when you are a crafter, a maker, a sewer, when you are somebody who works with these kind of projects, you know very well, you can't wait until the appropriate season, not if you actually want to have it made in time for the holiday or the event. So, best wishes, and have a wonderful time unwinding with fiber and fabric. We'll see you soon.